Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this joint, if I may put it that way, webinar hosted by BHP and International Trade Forum being invited along to give their views on what's going to happen on the growth in international trade. And BHP are our wonderful sponsors, and so we're looking forward to an interesting webinar and discussions. Before we start on international trade, however, in the sense of what we're going to propose as an ITF, I'm going to pass straight immediately over to Chris Humphreys, who's going to give us an update on what the latest trauma is in discussions between Barnier and Boris, and to find out whether there has been any progress whatsoever. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you, William, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen. Delighted to be promoted up the pecking order, actually. Usually I'm the one that's mopping up at the end and everybody's trying to disappear off to the coffee break. So equivalent to sort of Leeds United being promoted to the Premiership, I've been promoted up the order. No apologies for calling my presentation Deal or No Deal. I think this is probably a slide, a title slide I used 6, 7, 8 months ago when we were first starting to think about what Brexit really looked like. And obviously the pandemic, 23rd of March, lockdown, and all the subsequent negotiation furore about tier 3 and tier 2 have largely, to a great extent, meant that we've taken our eye off the ball. And the reason I thought that it would be appropriate to sort of give you an update on the latest announcements by government was that it would enable us to refocus exactly what we need to do and think about as we head towards the 31st of December. Why it's important, if I just slide on there, is that October the 15th was a Thursday. It probably wasn't that important a date in any of our diaries, but it was an incredibly important one in relation to the UK and to the EU, because it's the day on which the latest conference and negotiations actually collapsed, with the lack of an absolute or even any inkling of an agreement between Lord Frost and Michel Barnier, with the UK's chief negotiator effectively telling his EU counterpart, we're told, not to bother returning to the UK next week, which is pretty strong language. Whether it's true or not, we don't know. Whether it's political posturing or strong negotiation remains to be seen. And as an aside, it probably would be worthwhile at this stage parachuting Andy Burnham in, because he seems to be doing quite a good job of negotiating with our government at the moment in relation to Greater Manchester. But the interesting thing about this posturing or the strong negotiation is that Michael Gove was led to say over the weekend that there's less than a 50% chance of the UK striking a post-Brexit deal with the EU. I would have said it's a lot less than that. And generally, I sort of always take what Michael Gove says with a pinch of salt. So I think the percentage is going to be a lot less. What it does foresee is that the transition agreement, which ends on the 31st of December, will end, and there will be no agreement prior to that date. Brussels are showing, effectively in our minds, should be showing what Lord Frost says is more flexibility, maturity in negotiating, which I think in our words means that they've got to give. Whereas Brussels, from their part, are saying that the size of the UK-EU market is so large, and I think William's going to talk about this later, is that it needs to be strong in protecting free trade. And this is why there are so many non-negotiables on their part. I think what it led Michael Gove to say, and this is a quote from the end of last week, is that at the end of this year, we are leaving the EU single market and custom union, which means that there are both new challenges and new opportunities for businesses. No mistake, there are changes coming in just 75 days, and time is running out for businesses to act. A clear warning that we need to get our act together. 75 days doesn't seem a lot, and actually, in practice, I think the chance of us fitting all this business into 75 days is pretty impossible. But my own sort of frustration and tiresome with this is that, faced with the triple threat of resurgent coronavirus, tighter restrictions, a Sheffield City region that might well be heading into tier 3 pretty shortly, and a disorderly end to the transition period, I'm probably thinking, hang on, I've had enough. I need some clear leadership and some clear guidance on what I need to do and when. And that's really what I'm looking for. There's been a word that's come into to our language over the last 3 or 4 months, which is it's going to be like an Australian. And I didn't know whether it was a haircut. I didn't know whether it was some sort of deal where we were going to send Boris Johnson and Michael Gove off on a convict ship in a swap deal for the New Zealand PM, who seems to be doing a great job. But it's none. It's a word that's been parachuted into our language over the last few months to refer to the sort of arrangement we will end up with if we get to the end of the transition agreement with no deal with the EU. Australia quite clearly is not Canada. A Canada arrangement is one we'd like to have, where there is a comprehensive economic and trade deal that says exactly how things work and where there are preferential tariffs and customs duty to make sure that trade flows as unfettered as it can does. We're not going to get that, quite clearly. We're going to end up with an Australian, which I think is simply a palatable way of describing no deal, where there is no trade agreement with the EU, where we operate mainly on World Trade Organization rules, and where there are significant tariffs on imports and exports, particularly, I think, in relation to things like automotive parts, in relation to fruit processing. Some of the tariffs on those sort of goods are pretty punitive. So what support do we need on that? Well, the big thing over the weekend, following October the 15th, was this Time is Running Out campaign. The terminology is changing. It's 75 days. That's not many days. There's lots of business to get through. And what they are telling us is that there are substantive steps that we need to take now. If you sell goods to the EU, you will need to prepare for the new customs procedures. And there's a fair amount of features of the new sort of border agreements that you'll need to get to grips with. If you travel to the EU for work purposes, you will need to check if you need a permit and apply if necessary. If you employ overseas nationals, you will need to prepare your business for the implementation of the new immigration system. And from the 1st of January 2021, if you want to hire anyone from outside the UK, including the EU, you must be a Home Office licensed sponsor, and that will take some time to get. And then finally, if you provide services in the EU, you must ensure that the qualifications you've got now are recognised by the EU and recognised by EU regulations, which will enable you to continue to practice and service clients come the end of the transition agreement. So 5 clear substantive steps that you need to deal with. And I think in the public domain, you can see quite a lot of checklists that deal also with things you should deal with on the import and export front, and start ticking those off. Other than that, you'll be pleased to know that the Brexit subcommittee is now meeting 5 times a week. I don't know why they had to move to 5 times. I would have been happy if they'd been doing that for quite a few months now. And the government is going to write to what they tell us is 200,000 businesses to help them and provide support in relation to what they need to do. And Richard will be talking to us about the sort of support he can offer shortly. £705 million of investment in jobs, infrastructure and technology at the border. Hopefully that will avoid the traffic jams down in Kent, but I doubt it. And £84 million in grants to grow the customs intermediary sector. Significant investment, lots of guidance, lots of help. But I think what we're looking for as a group, as a firm, and also with the ITF, is to question what else do we or do you need as we move through the next 75 days. And at that point, I will hand back to William.
Well, thank you, Chris. I don't know whether, there's not a great deal we can say at this moment in time because everything's up in the air. It's just the same as negotiation with Manchester. Other than, things are going to change very quickly because we're running out of time. I happen to still take the positive view that no matter how negative it may be that we have no deal, that I still firmly believe that we'll start to negotiate with individual companies if necessary on bilateral agreements, which has already been mentioned by certain members of the EU Commission. So we wait to see, but meanwhile, we've got to get on with life. And so the one thing we're going to need is support, and we're going to need advice, and we're going to need strength and support behind us. And I've got nothing better than to say, then we're going to introduce you now to Richard Halstead. Richard will explain the free support that is given through a full 360-degree review about your business using the Growth Mapper diagnostic. Richard, being managing growth manager at the Sheffield City region, is overseeing all this. And this leads us to the opportunity to apply for a grant funding for projects to help you improve used experienced consultants with up to 43% funding for projects around £5,000 in value. The projects can range from strategy and sales growth to productivity improvement and even ISO 9000 type accreditation. There were plenty of support, plenty of opportunity to ask questions and find out how the Manufacturing Growth Programme can help your business. And we will give Richard all the time he wants. Over to you, Richard.
How kind of you, William. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start by sharing my screen and hopefully show the presentation. There, hopefully you can see that all. The Manufacturing Growth Programme, I have the pleasure of giving away free money, in effect, which is always nice to do. Dragged me out of semi-retirement to do this. So what is the Manufacturing Growth Programme? Well, we started in 2016 with Manufacturing Growth Programme 1, and in those 2.5 years supported more than 2,000 SME manufacturers across England. We helped them create 3,200 new jobs through 10.5 million worth of support from Europe. In April last year, which is when I joined the programme, we received an extension, again, European money. So having heard the conundrum about Brexit and the challenges that we're facing, we're here to spend European money, and the programme runs until March 2023 and will not be affected by Brexit, whatever happens. So that allows us to continue to support SME manufacturing businesses. We do, as William says, an in-depth diagnostic, which costs nothing, is free. You get people like myself come in and help you look at your business. And it's great as an SME manufacturer to spend some time working on the business as opposed to what most people do, which is working in the business. And we started in the Sheffield City region on the 1st of June this year, hence the reason for rolling out this communication. We cover a lot of the country, so you can see the red areas that we now cover. In effect, the LEP, the Local Enterprise Partnership, has to buy into the national contract for it to operate in their area. And you can see we have a range of LEPs who have bought in and roughly cover about 50% of the country, including closer to home, the Sheffield City region. And that Sheffield City region includes the overlap areas into the D2N2 region, Chesterfield, Bolsover, and Bassetlaw and Worksop and areas like that. To be eligible for the programme and apply for the grants, you have to be an SME, and there's the traditional European definition, and you have to be a manufacturer. Basically, you have to take a component and turn it into something else, or you have to have the intellectual property around the manufacture of that product. And you must demonstrate an intention to grow. And if I'm honest, I've been working on this programme for over a year now. And because manufacturers tend to have assets that they need to work, they always want to grow their top line because that will work the assets better. So you work with me to make sure you meet that criteria. What do you get? You get tailored support. So you get somebody like myself helping you and working with you. We put you through a very interesting business diagnostic, which is an online questionnaire called Growth Mapper. It's a series of 100 questions with yes/no answers. And that's really interesting because it forces you on one side of the fence or the other. So you may read the question and think, well, I do a bit of this and I do a bit of that. You have to say yes or no as to whether or not you do that in the question. We take those 100 answers and we map them into 10 strategic business areas and create a report that looks at your perceived strengths and weaknesses in those 10 business areas, from strategy through to finance, through to quality, continuous improvement, productivity, through to people and skills and leadership. So quite a wide-ranging diagnostic. And we can do it with not just the MD, we can do it across the management team. So we get a two-dimensional output. We get a view of your perceived strengths and weaknesses as an SME manufacturer, and we get a view of the alignment of yourself and your peers. The answers are kept confidential, but it gives you a view of alignment and whether or not everybody's rowing in the same direction, which is tremendously important. If you've got a business where your whole management team are all agreed and rowing in the same direction, you have a much more powerful business that will be a much more successful. We come up with an action plan and identify improvement projects. And that project could be bringing in a consultant to help you through the Brexit mire over the next few months. So it could be absolutely around Brexit, bringing in an international trade consultant to help you prepare for Brexit. And not only do we help on the project and defining the project and looking at your business and working through the business issues with you, but we can bring in a consultant to and fund for South Yorkshire, Sheffield City region, 43% of the project. So you will only pay effectively 57%, or for those in the D2N2, the North Derbyshire, North Notts area, it is 33% grant. Obviously, we work in a wide network, including people like the International Trade Forum, so we can work to maximise opportunities. I've already referred a couple of my clients who were not aware of the ITF into the ITF, so that's great to bring them into this network. And as COVID allows, we will run manufacturing themes workshops, but that's going to be obviously once we're back doing work face to face. A little bit about Growth Mapper, because I really like this diagnostic and I've worked in business for far too many years to mention. But it is a business diagnostic, it's online, and it focuses on what's going well and what are the areas for improvement. And it gives you time to look at the business rather than working in it day to day. We can have your whole board, your whole management team. It only takes 15 minutes to complete. And then you get an in-depth report that looks at where you are, benchmark your business against other high growth manufacturing businesses, get a view of the team's perceptions and how aligned the team is, and result in an action plan to help make improvements. Many businesses that we deal with come with a project they want to do, which is fine. So the project doesn't have to come out of Growth Mapper. You can come in saying, I want to do an ISO 9001 accreditation. I want to use this consultant to help me prepare and do some internal and management audits with my team. And we'll fund that project. But this process is really useful at making you think about where you are as a business. That's a little snapshot of the report. So you can see we take your data, we cut it in a radar diagram, and you can see the different colors of the various respondents. There were 2 respondents in this example. We look at the strengths and weaknesses analysis in those 10 business areas. And then we look at the range of alignment of the responses. So do people agree or don't they agree? And then we get into a full scorecard. Looks a bit like my O-level results. Well, it doesn't actually, because this one shows all A's in how the business is doing. I had a few more C's in mine. And so you look at each key issue, where you are as a business, in this one, all A's, and how aligned you are in terms of the management team's views of where you are in terms of that business issue. And then we take each issue individually. You can see the example there is strategy. And we look at the characteristics of a high growth business and look at where you are. And I spend about an hour to 2 hours with a business going through this stuff. And the feedback I've had is tremendous. It really does make them think about their business. The sorts of projects that you can then do that are funded by grants, by the 43% grant in South Yorkshire, can range from developing a business strategy through to securing ISO 9001, through marketing and sales. It could be about developing a Brexit strategy, or it could be around lean manufacturing, could be around, we've done some leadership coaching. So it can be anything from bringing in a consultant to do support, typically 8-10 days support, because the projects are about £5,000 in value, but you get 43% of that funded. Or it could be bringing in somebody to do some coaching support. It does not fund training. If you're looking for training, then the skills service in the Sheffield Growth Hub are the best people to talk to. But again, because we're part of that environment of that team, we can help you with that. So a whole host of projects that can help your business. Where do we cover? Well, we cover the Sheffield City region. That's myself. I only work 3 days a week, but therefore I only cover a smaller patch, which is Doncaster, my hometown, Barnsley and Bassetlaw. And Marcus, my colleague who does work full-time, covers Sheffield, Rotherham and the other D2, N2 overlap areas. So that's the coverage. We can share these slides, I'm sure, at the end. We can circulate to the attendees. We do cover other parts of the region. I did notice on the list that we've got some people from Halifax. We do cover Leeds City region. We do cover a lot of the Midlands. We don't cover Northeast and Northwest. So I think there was a Northeast business when I looked through the attendee list. But for those majority of people that are listening from the manufacturing environment are from Sheffield. So we do cover yourselves. And that's myself. I will stop sharing my screen and hand you back. I assume questions are going to be through the Q&A at the end, William.
I think so, Richard, and it gives people the time to also think about what they're going to, how they're going to phrase it for you. But I hope they're going to make notes now. My one regret is that you weren't around about 30 years ago to have done something similar. It just shows you how times have changed. Whilst there were different consultants and whilst universities were offering services and so on, there's nothing as good as this. And, you know, it's a shame that it's taken so long, in a sense, for it to appear. But it has, and it would be crazy for companies not to take advantage of it. One of the questions I put forward to you is there a limitation as regards the number of companies you can take on board and as regards how small they are? But I'll leave that to, I don't know if you want to answer that now.
I can answer that now. They can be from a sole trader. I've done somebody who's doing picture framing, complex picture framing. He's got a CNC machine in his shed, and he's a one-man band. Up to the highest is 250 employees. So it's the wide range. The only criteria is they have to be a manufacturer. The best acid test for are you a manufacturer is your SIC code on Companies House. And so that's the first thing we look at.
Okay, I may come back to that later, but Richard, that's a great starter, and thank you very much indeed. Apart from anything else, on time, which is unlikely to be kept by the time that I've done, but there we go. I'm now going to sort of switch over myself because I'm now going to be on, as they say. So I'll go straight away to the shared screen. But one thing that I want to say to people beforehand, just as a sort of an amusing starter, is that the January this year, which is not very long ago, that we held an event called the Barriers to Exporting and How to Overcome Them. 2 months later, and there has only been one barrier, and we still haven't overcome it, and that's COVID-19. So how life has changed. But let's start now. Let me get onto the shared screen. Am I there now, gentlemen, or not? No. Have I clicked the wrong thing there, guys?
Have you done the shared screen at the bottom, William?
Have I done it? Yeah, I thought I'd done it, but I didn't. Let's now. I'm going to have to go back one. Where do I go? My God, I've lost it. Where have I gone to? Shared screen here. My apologies, people. I was going to it, and then it suddenly disappeared. No.
Just it might be that the screen's open. If you go over the Zoom symbol, have you got a screen open there?
Just a second. The Zoom symbol. Is that it? There we go. Shared screen. There we go. Right, that should be it. I hope we'll do it in a share. Let's have a look. There we go.
Yeah, that's good.
Excellent.
So there we are from the beginning, hopefully. How's that?
So if you just click above, that's it, where it says from beginning.
From beginning. Got it. There we go. Right. Thank you. Thank you. For those who wonder who that's been helping me there, it's my lieutenant, none other than the chief executive of the ITF, who you can assess is younger and more able as regards computers. But there we go. He'll be on shortly. Chris has already given us an update on Brexit, and no matter what they throw at us, we must think positively about exporting now and in the future. Of course, we need to make all the necessary preparations for leaving the EU on the 31st of December, be it with or without a deal. And there is no doubt there will be difficulties to overcome in the short term, but we will overcome them as we always do and must. If there isn't a deal by the end of the year, negotiations will still be ongoing into next year, even if it means striking bilateral agreements with individual EU member countries, which is why I am so positive in this regard. Why? Well, they need us as much, if not more, than we need them. And after reading the first slide, you'll see that I'm going to tell you something now as an example. The French catch 84% of all the cod in the Channel, but they won't get one if they don't reach an agreement to phase down their current greedy level. So common sense should prevail at some stage on this one. Now, right, here we go. You'll notice here that the EU exports to the UK are 372 billion, which results in a trade deficit of 72 billion on our behalf, because we're only exporting 300 billion to them. However, UK exports to non-EU countries under WTO rules yield us a 46% surplus. Not only that, but UK exports to these non-EU countries have grown 3 times as quickly as exports to the EU single market since it was established. Our third slide shows the trade with individual EU countries. And rather amusingly, you'll see in the sense that we've put it in this particular order, where we're showing the surplus at the top and the deficit low down. And lo and behold, look who's up there as regards our most important trading partner, in a sense, in Europe, Ireland. And we have a trade surplus with them of some 13 billion. But with the minnows that follow, Luxembourg, Malta, Cyprus, and Finland, it adds up to about 17 billion. But this is where we get the overall deficit when we start talking in terms of how much deficit we've got all those countries now. Now, when you start to go down there, you'll see that if it hadn't been for those green ones at the top, our overall deficit would have been 990 million. But 9 countries at the bottom are responsible for 85% of that deficit. And you can see for yourself who they are. 1 or 2 might surprise you, 1 or 2 might not. And now on to the next slide. We see here that, as I've just said to you, that we're trading with a deficit of 72 billion with the EU and a 46 billion surplus with all the non-EU countries. That means we've got a deficit overall of 26 billion. Now, just out of interest, when we joined the EU got a share of the world economy of 38%. At the referendum, it was down to 16%. And by 2050, it's forecast to be down to only 10%. Now, the European Commission's own trade estimates for Europe, for trade, suggest rather that there's a 90% of global economic growth in the next 2 decades will come from outside the EU. It therefore suggests that the UK needs to focus on these non-EU markets to maximize its growth in exports. Trading under WTO rules already accounts for over 55% of our total current exports, with the USA being our most important trading partner, accounting for 20% of all exports. The global market outside the EU is going to be substantially greater than it is now and will continue to yield an even greater surplus, outweighing any trading deficit with the EU. I think that's going to, have I jumped the gun a bit there, trading global market outside the EU. Right, I think we've got one of these slightly out of sync, but it doesn't matter. Companies involved in international trade, and this is important when we start talking in terms of wanting Richard's support. 45% of UK firms with more than 50 employees are currently involved in international trade. But when we start talking in terms of the smaller companies, less than 50 employees, only 14.5% are involved in international trade. And I can assure you in South Yorkshire, that reduces to well under 10%, which is rather alarming, rather frightening. But we have to think positive. We have to think positive and encourage more people to not only export, but also to think globally. People think globally about going on holiday, not just going to Europe. Well, it's no different. And here we go. I'm going to tell you now about where we as the ITF have focused in our country events in recent years. Before the referendum, Brexit referendum, we were focusing almost exclusively on countries outside the EU because they didn't see any point in doing it because it was classified and classed as a home market. But as soon as we had the result of Brexit, we realized that we're going to have to introduce ourselves formally to our European friends. And so suddenly, as you can see from the list, we hosted events on in Europe, that is, on Sweden, Poland, Holland, Czech Republic, Switzerland, Ireland, albeit Switzerland, Europe, not necessarily. And then, of course, when we realized that we were going to have to look further afield, our emphasis has shifted. And not only have we been covering our backs in thinking in terms of what's going to be happening from now on, but we recognize that USA and Southeast Asia are two very, very important potential markets for us. Just to give you another idea as regards how extensive the ITF has become and how important they are to supporting companies in trade, it was the UKTI some 7-8 years ago that initially approached us to say, we think that you can do trade missions better than we can, because you're business people and you're going to be supporting your business colleagues to be able to organize and plan research markets. And initially we were advised, or we researched it with other chambers of commerce members and so on, and we selected Singapore. And surprisingly, when we chose Singapore, not only is it the sort of, if you like, the hub of the whole of the Southeast Asian market, but equally it's also the strongest in the Far East on oil and gas, and the third largest with regard to aerospace, which is quite remarkable until you go out there and you realize just how extensive it is. And that's why we followed it up with 2 further exhibitions, visits rather, to coincide with exhibitions in aerospace and in oil and gas. But since then, as you can see, we've been all over the place. We've been Turkey, Canada, Berlin, Dubai, Poland, Czech Republic, Thailand, and Ireland, which we'll come on to in greater detail soon. But we've covered some ground. And the interesting thing is, every time we went to a European country, none of them expected us to leave the EU. They just thought it was sort of nothing serious. Obviously, you can see from there we didn't visit France. That's something to be discussed at another time.
William, are we going to do the 2 polls?
We're going to do the 2 polls. And that's a good thing. We've done the target markets. I beg your pardon, I've skipped one, haven't I? I do beg your pardon. Yeah, my fault. We want to do the first poll now, and that's going to be based on, and if I can get Nick to sort of be prepared for it, this is going to be which of the following regions are you looking to develop international trade within in the next 12 months? And this is multiple choice, so you could tick every box if you wished, but we'd like you to sort of do that now, and so we can see whether you're on the same wavelength as we are. So I shall leave that with you whilst you click it in, and somebody can tell me when the poll is finished. How are we doing, folks?
I think it's time for about half a minute, so it should come up the results very soon.
Right, okay. Well, that's pretty impressive. That really is impressive. I'm fascinated. I'm not surprised at the EU. I think that that's logical, that we should continue to focus on it. We can't ignore it. It's still our biggest overall market, not individually, but overall. And I'm fascinated about the Trans-Pacific, so we'll come on to that shortly, because I don't know whether I've reached my slide. Are we happy with that? Can I move on? Right. So they're the country events and the trade missions that were led. Now, these are the provisional trade missions that we're talking about for the future. And here you can see that we've covered some of the ones that have already been mentioned. In other words, Southeast Asia covers a multitude of sins, but this is our plan for next year is to go to Malaysia and Singapore. One of the benefits of this is the fact that when you go to Singapore, you can use it as a springboard to go to Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, wherever in the Southeast Asian market. But Malaysia is a very, very important market for us to develop. So that's why they're there. En route, of course, and we shall come on to that. But in September, we realized that one of the things we try to do when we're doing overseas trade missions is to coincide it with an important exhibition. And there is nothing in Germany more important in engineering terms and manufacturing terms than EMO, which this year is held in Hanover. Next year will be held in Hanover. And this is the European Manufacturing Organization, what it is. And that's what we're talking in terms of. And it covers a vast acreage. It's by far and away the largest exhibition we'll probably see in Europe and even in the world with regard to manufacturing. So it would be sensible for us to coincide a visit there next September, and that's to be discussed with our members, because there are other exhibitions, many exhibitions focused in Germany to develop, but that strikes me as being an obvious one. We've put in early 2022 there, Dubai World Expo. If people have never been to a World Expo, this is probably going to be the most impressive World Expo that's ever been held since they started after the war. And all I can tell you is that it starts in October 2021 and goes through to the following April, I think it is the following in 2022. We're looking at it going out there in early 2022 because we think we'll have all have been vaccinated by then and we should be safe to go. But also it's a very good market for the Brits. And so there's plenty of opportunities for us to do trade out there. So we don't necessarily say we're going to an exhibition, we're using that as a springboard as well. And we would have been going to Chicago in September this year if it hadn't been for the virus. And but we almost certainly will be following that up in 2022 with the equivalent of Germany's EMO, European's EMO, with the United States IMTS, International Manufacturing Technology Show, which is again the most important one in that region, that block, Pacific and also Americas. Now, this is the interesting thing that comes back to the slide we've just done as regard the target markets that we came back to as regards which you voted for. Obviously, we've got to do existing EU countries. It goes without saying. And the reason we put those two at the top, Ireland and the Netherlands, is that the Netherlands is quite staggering as regards the volume of growth of exports we do with them and trade with them. One of the reasons why it's distorted, incidentally, is because of Rotterdam, because it's the volume of trade that goes through Rotterdam from a point of view of exports to be distributed throughout Europe, but also imports. A lot of our imports come through Rotterdam from other countries. But it's still a very, very important country. And we've not really done it much in the past and focused on it. I'm going to introduce you to Peter soon, who's going to expand more on Ireland, but let me just explain that we went there on a trade mission in January to coincide with their manufacturing and supply chain exhibition that was being held. And we were introduced and met different trading organizations, but the most important one, impressive one, was the British-Irish Chamber of Commerce, which was probably better, should have been named the Irish-British because it's very much Irish run. But the point being that when we were there, we introduced them also to one of our local organisations called the Made in Sheffield. And the Made in Sheffield catalogue contains the details of up to 300 companies and by market sector. And this excited them immensely because they do something very similar. And it was at this that they said to us, look, we're not interested in the politics, we're interested in the trade. It doesn't matter what happens after Brexit, whether we're in or whether we're out. It's up to business people to make sure that we maintain trade and develop the trade. And Peter, I'm going to hand you over to shortly, who's going to be able to explain this further. The other target markets are what were listed for you to vote on. And again, I've mentioned there before, Singapore, Malaysia, we took a trade mission to Thailand in last November and hosted an exhibition in Bangkok. Vietnam, Indonesia, all very important markets, growing at dramatic rates and should not be ignored. And it looks like the people that have voted on the last one agree with us. The Gulf states I've mentioned is because of Dubai fundamentally, but there are other trade, and it's often used as a springboard to others. USA and Canada are obvious. Whether we get a USA trade deal is very much going to depend upon who gets in. I think that ironically, Trump would probably give us a trade deal much faster than Biden will, but it's still a huge market for us. It's still our biggest trading market, and would be ludicrous not to focus on it. And similarly with Canada, there are endless opportunities for the Brits in Canada. Why we don't take more advantage of it is beyond me. And finally on there is the Trans-Pacific Partnership of 11 countries, which I've just listed there, not necessarily the most important 6, but the others are already included in some of the other trade deal situations. For example, in the form of Singapore, Malaysia, and Vietnam are part of it, as well as Brunei, and the other one will come to me in a second, but it'll be Peru. No, Peru's there. I'll have to think about it in a second. But there are 11 countries in that Trans-Pacific situation. And this is one that the Brits are very keen to become part of. The Americans pulled out of it. Oh, it's Canada, of course. That's where the other one. And it is literally going to be one of the largest trading partnerships that we could ever proverbially get into bed with. So it was interesting that it's been identified by the people listening in. I'm now going to, at this stage, I'm now going to put question 2 to you. There we go. And this is a logical follow-on to what we've already done. But from an ITF point of view, we'll go into how we can support you later on. But these are the countries that follow on from what you've said. And by all means, enter as many as you wish. And I don't doubt there may be others as well. But you have a go at that now, if you wouldn't mind. And let's see what results we get out of this one. Fascinating. Fascinating. I would love to know how many people want to go to Chile and Peru, or whether it's Australia and New Zealand. But it's fascinating, and it gives us an insight into where we go. But it's a good spread, and it shows that people are seriously interested in exporting globally, and that is very refreshing, very reassuring. I'm delighted to witness it. Okay, so I am now going to hand you over to Peter, and he's going to explain about the new ways to market that we've established with our friends across the Irish Sea.
Thanks very much, William. Yes, and your presentation sort of reminds me of the good old days when we were allowed to travel places and actually go and see people face to face. But it won't have escaped everybody's notice that unfortunately that's not the case at the moment, and international travel is very few and far between, and so we're having to find other ways to engage with our customers or potential customers, and obviously people are having to adapt those strategies as we go along. It was always hoped that COVID would be a short, sharp disruptor to our business activities, but as things progress, I think we all now, there's a dawning reality that we're going to be living with this for some time to come, and so therefore we have to adapt our models accordingly. So I've just put a few slides here on things that people could consider as part of their online strategy, which I think is so important now when you're doing those communications with particularly overseas markets. So the first one there I've got is the DIT Selling Online Overseas Accelerator Program. Now this has been running, they've done their first session earlier on in the year, and now this is the second session, and I'm told by the DIT that they will be running this into the new year as well. And you can see there that they've got 3 sessions throughout November, one utilising LinkedIn for business development, the second one, international email marketing strategy, on the 5th of November, and measuring your online success on the 17th of November. All these events are free of charge for businesses to attend, and I'll be sending details after this event on how you can register for these. But our members were involved in the first phase, and I did get feedback from one of our members after they'd attended in July. And just so you can hear it from one of the attendees, they came back and said, can highly recommend the DIT Selling Overseas online courses to anyone. The Yorkshire arm of DIT managed to get some excellent presenters who are specialists in the field, but also practicing what they preach, which made a refreshing change. So I think that just shows that that's high praise indeed, and it might well be worth 3 hours of your time over November in attending these courses, and really trying to make the most of your online presence as you try and attract and maintain international customers. The second one on the list there is the one that William referred to, which is commend.com. And this is a new B2B trade facilitation platform that's been developed by the British Irish Chamber of Commerce, and they were telling us about it in January. It's like the business equivalent to LinkedIn. So you can have your business profile on the platform, and you can join various communities and various industry sectors, and then you can be recommended to others, or equally you can recommend others to others. And the idea is that it's a community of trusted businesses that can recommend to each other, and hopefully facilitating an increase in trade. It's very much in its pre-launch phase at the moment, and so they have offered ITF members and other associated companies to us a free seat on this platform, ready for the launch, which will be early in 2021. So again, it's well worth considering, and I'll be sending out details later on how you can quickly put a profile on this platform, and hopefully we will then get the critical mass. So when it's launched, it will be actually a useful tool to use as you look for partners or suppliers or customers around the world. Obviously, it will be, in the first instance, it would be very much British Irish persuaded, but we hope that this will be rolled out to other areas of the world as it goes along. The final opportunity I'd just like to draw your attention to is something that we're involved in November, the 11th and 12th of November, which is being organised by a good friend of ours, the EEN. and they're arranging a virtual inward trade mission for the Czech Republic. And they'll be arranging one-to-one meetings with Czech businesses from the following sectors. And you can see those there: engineering, industry 4.0, information technologies, and aerospace industry. From what I gather, there's over 150 Czech businesses already signed up for this. And so therefore, we're very keen that, that particularly in this area, and it's also going to be in the Leeds area, that there's many UK businesses that they can come and approach and have a conversation with. So again, there'll be information from me in the next day or so on that. As part of that trade mission, we're organising a 4.0 presentation in collaboration with the AMRC on the 12th of November, where they'll be giving a virtual tour of the AMRC, not just for the Czech delegates, but any UK delegates that are interested in seeing that. And then there'll be a presentation on 4.0, how to make it simple, recognizing it as a journey rather than a huge expense in digitalization. So it should hopefully be an interesting event. I think virtual trade missions are something that people are exploring at the moment, and we very much hope that this will be a success for both the Czech businesses and obviously the UK businesses. William, thank you very much. It's always good that these sorts of activities can attract some sort of funding. And there's been a soft launch just recently from the government for the new Internationalisation Fund. And this is, as you can read, is match funded grants of between 1,000 and 9,000 and will be available for future activity. The fund can be used to support areas including, and there it's listed, the market research, translation services, IP advice, international social media, trade fairs, market visits, and consultancy. This is exclusive news to the people on this particular event, because the government haven't launched it yet, but they are accepting companies to have an expression of interest. So if that is something that you think you could utilize over the course of the next few months, then again, I will provide details, or please just let me know and we'll get your expression of interest registered with the DIT. Hopefully you'll be hearing about that in the news outlets and the media in the next few days or maybe a couple of weeks, because I think this is a very important part of encouraging SMEs, particularly, to look at their global footprint and to look at where they will be targeting markets through 2021. Thank you very much, William.
Thank you, Peter. Are you going to give a plug on the government website?
Yes, thank you. Yes, very much. Yeah, we've not particularly focused on the Brexit transition, other than Chris's presentation at the beginning, but just very useful for people to know that the government gov.uk/transition is an extremely useful tool for any SME who's preparing to get themselves ready for the 1st of January 2021. Most questions that people will have can be found on there. You can also apply to receive notifications. So every time something's agreed, it'll be put on that website and you'll be pinged an email or a WhatsApp or a text or whatever you sign up to, and then that therefore can keep you up to date with any news or any updates with regard how our relationship or what we need to do come 1st of January 2021.
Thanks, Peter. Not quite the final question, but the question that we'd like to put forward to you to answer again now as regards the choice, as regards your readiness for exporting. Can we put that on? There we go.
Mm.
Ah, wow. Well, I view that sort of positively in the sense that it looks like that most people, like 90%, are ready for inward processing, the VAD declaration, the freight forwarding, and so on. But obviously, everybody just waited to find out what's going to happen with regard to the deal. And that's why nobody can answer and understand. We can understand why customs duty and tariffs are therefore the most important. But I'm delighted to see that the others looks as if people have got their act together and are prepared as best they can be. Finally, therefore, before we get through to Q&A, is just to help, just to say that the International Trade Forum is here to support you all the way. And by that, you know, what we do is that it's a members organization. It's not a government organization or a department organization. It is a members organization, and we do what you want to do. And so if you want to focus on a particular country, we will organize events for that particular country or region. And we then have phenomenal networks globally with regard to organizations to help us prepare and help you to do your research, be it to find agents, distributors, customers, whatever it may be, to support you in preparing that, and also organizing the trade mission to a particular country if you so wish, not least of all taking in exhibitions and so on. But we're welcomed, and you can visit us on our website there, which is dead easy, www.intradeforum.co.uk, and you've got our email addresses, and you'll certainly be receiving this, I'm certain, from BHP. It's now a case of saying, right, we want to go back to Q&A. So open to the floor. Any questions you'd like to put forward to us?
William, there's one that's come from the floor already, which is in relation to the fact that the transition agreement ends end of December, and we possibly will end up with an Australian solution. And the question is, when will tariffs be imposed? And now my understanding is that what will happen on the 1st of January is that we will move from the EU common tariff to the UK global tariff, and it will happen from that date. And that if you go on the gov.uk website, you'll be able to find a list of commodities and what tariff will apply under the old system and the new. But as far as I can see, it's from the 1st of January 2021. That's
for our exports rather than
for both, I think. I mean, I'm looking particularly on imports. That's tariffs coming in, and trying to make sure that you look at the list and you're not paying more tariff than you should do.
It's mainly zero, apart from sort of agriculture and
and some are less, some are lower. So I think you're right. You need to go and have a look at the list, but they'll apply from the 1st of Jan.
The list is gov.uk/guidance/UK-tariffs. And all the information is on there.
Might be worth putting that on the list on one of these. So one of these things we're doing now, they're going to be circulated to everybody. Okay. Any others coming through?
Is there a limit on company size to access the Internationalisation Fund?
I think SMEs, is it not?
It is SMEs. Yes, there is some eligibility. I'm just putting that. I'm just putting that link on, and then I will get that information for you.
Well, enough, I've got the DIT thing in front of me, and it doesn't mention the size of them, but it historically has always been regarding SMEs. But it is ironic that I'm looking at their presentation here and it doesn't mention it.
I've got that information. If you do the next one, Chris, I'll come back to that.
I think that's probably it. In terms of questions from the floor at the moment, I think the poll was interesting, William. I think in terms of the programme for the next seminar, we had in mind customs duty, and whilst it's not my specialism, we'll certainly make sure we've got a customs duty specialist on there, and that will flow through to rates of customs duty and also to the use of customs duty warehouses to improve your cash flow.
Well, we're even talking about that the other day as regards whether we're going to be setting up, these duty-free hubs in Britain as regards that. But it is a factor. I'm sure that everybody is concerned. It's always been the biggest issue as regards tariffs and duties as well. And that's got to be something that everybody's anxious to get resolved as soon as possible.
William, the eligibility for the Internationalisation Fund, the company must be an SME with up to 250 employees. No more than 25% of the business is owned by an enterprise which is not an SME, and annual turnover does not exceed 50 million euro, or annual balance sheet does not exceed 43 million euro.
That's the same as the one that Richard was referring to as well, exactly the same terms.
That's our definition, yeah.
Is yours pounds or euros, Richard?
No, we do it in euros because we're dealing with European money.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It seems rather strange that the DTI is supporting us on international trade using European money as well. So in one way and another, they still want to look after us. It'd be ironic if we're going to spend all that money to go to other countries rather than European, but there we go. It'll be wait to see. Okay. Is that about it?
That's it from the floor, William. Yeah.
Well, I'm absolutely fascinated by the response from the floor as regards the choices. And I mean, we've certainly got to follow up on that. I'm certainly fascinated by their desire to go to the transatlantic partnership countries, but which is a hell of a spread anyway, because it's covering them on both sides of the Pacific. But it's still interesting that they're more adventurous countries, shall we say, than would be the typical ones. And so that's rather interesting. And so that's something for us to take on board as a trade forum, and we will be there to support them in any way we can. And we'd like to be able to follow up on that by being more specific as regards the countries as well. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, BHP, for hosting it. Thank you for putting up with my ineptitude on the computer. But we look forward to next time. And obviously, we're all now in tenterhooks to find out whether we're in or out, as we have been all year. So thank you very much indeed. And until the next time.